So any video that we do, like on our main YouTube channel that is about Section 8, man, the comments fill up with people saying, it's the best thing or it's the worst thing.
You know, Section 8 is the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's so easy. I think there are a lot of myths, and I'm glad we'll get to all that today because I think there's a good space in the middle.
See, the house is rented for needs to be rented for $1,000. I'll pay you the difference. Maybe I'll even pay you $150 more. You know, I'll pay you more than that. I'll pay you $1,050. Don't ever do that.
I don't know the order of the hierarchy of these government programs, but have you ever seen Section 8 not be paid out?
I get a check every month. They're pleasant to work with. They call me if something needs to happen. I go in there. The house is clean. They're taking care of it. And I love that. I think that's fantastic. Or you could have just a complete nightmare. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Evernest Real Estate Investor Podcast. I am one of your hosts, and I've got my co-host with me today. Adam, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Spencer. Good to be here.
Great to have us back in the studio. We last time we actually were responding to some videos, and one of the videos really made me think about Section 8. And I was working out this morning, and I was like, we need to talk about Section 8 because there's so much. What I found is that people are very opinionated about Section 8. And so any video that we do, like on our main YouTube channel that is about Section 8, man, the comments fill up with people saying, it's the best thing or it's the worst thing. And so what I want to do is just the two of us just sit around and talk about, you know, what is the truth about Section 8? And what can people really, really expect? Like, we don't want to sugarcoat it. But we don't want to probably throw it under the bus. So what's your initial reaction when I say, hey, let's talk about Section 8? What's your initial reaction to that?
So like you said, I've never done Section 8 myself, but I've heard our friend Brian, we talk about a lot. You know, when I first got into real estate, he told me about all the negatives of Section 8, you know, but then you hear about all these gurus online that, you know, they think they say it's a can't miss type formula. You know, Section 8 is the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's so easy. So I think there are a lot of myths, and I'm glad we'll get to all that today because I think there's a good space in the middle. I don't think it's, you know, necessarily detrimental depending on where you buy the houses, but I don't think it's the best thing ever too. I think it all depends on where you buy it and honestly how much experience you have with it.
Yeah, and I think maybe one other thing is depends on who you put in there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Everything kind of rises and falls on your resident in these things. And but yeah, I would say Brian Miles, for me, I've done several Section 8, but he's the king of Section 8 that I know of. He's done more than anybody that I know, and so I've heard all of his the warnings, and then but yeah, he still continues to do it if ever he does a rental.
Yeah.
There was a group here in town. They've gotten run out of town within the past decade, but they used to do only Section 8, and I don't know how they did that. But they only did Section 8. They even set their office up right next to the Section 8 office downtown in Birmingham. Oh, yeah. So because they wanted everybody just to come to their office and rent their houses and stuff. And they put you knew which house was theirs because they put red metal roofs on all of their houses. Oh, yeah. So they would go buy these junkers, throw a red metal roof, put lipstick on the pig, and then rent it out Section 8.
Can you say this company's name or no online?
No, I don't want to say it was a person. I don't know if they had I know they had a company name, but it was I knew the person.
Okay. You can tell me later what it is.
I actually sold him a couple of houses back in the day, but anyway, yeah, he got out of town.
They had to all be ugly. A red metal roof makes one ugly anyway.
They were very recognizable.
Yeah.
So you can probably still see them today if you drive around. A lot of them in West End.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So let's talk about what Section 8 actually is. So let's kick it off with this. I mean, it's federal rent assistance program that essentially is set up to, the whole purpose of Section 8 is to really help people who can't afford housing. Maybe they're down on their luck. Maybe they don't have a job, or maybe they just have really low income. Help subsidize some of the housing expense for them. We know housing's expensive, but it allows people to kind of get back on their feet. And so you can apply for Section 8. There's always more people applying for Section 8 than there are housing vouchers. But if you're approved, you get a housing voucher if you're a resident, and then you take that housing voucher, let's just say, and it may be dependent on how many kids you have or whatever. And let's just say I'm a single mom and I've got 3 kids. Well, your voucher may be for a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, or 3-bedroom, 2-bath. And so you would take that voucher and then you would go and look for a house that was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath that fit that, or 3-bedroom, 1-bath, and then you would apply for that property. And now the thing, at least here in Alabama, Section 8 is not a protected class, meaning if you're a landlord, you don't have to allow Section 8. So we always ask, people who are when we're managing their property are like, do you want to allow Section 8? And they'll either say yes or no. So if they say no and somebody has a Section 8, well, they'll say, does this house take Section 8? And we'll be like, no. So they're not protected from that standpoint, but there are plenty of people who want to rent out Section 8 because the federal government is essentially guaranteeing that they're going to pay the rent that the voucher says they're going to pay. And so if the voucher is for $750 or $800, just if it's on, I think the way it works is it's based on the bedroom, bathroom, and then really depending on where they're renting that house, how much Section 8 is going to pay. So if I came back and said, hey, I've got this house, it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath in Roebuck, and I'm going to rent it for $1,000 a month, and Section 8 comes back and they says, well, this voucher's approved for $900 a month. Then I have a choice to make. I can either rent it for $900 or I can say nope and move on to somebody else.
Now you can't, I've heard different opinions on this. Can you charge them the difference? Or you're not supposed to for a private pay?
You are not supposed to. Now, this is what happens. This is where people get in trouble, is because you'll have a resident that comes and they'll say, hey, my voucher's for $900 and I see the house is rented for $1,000, needs to be rented for $1,000. I'll pay you the difference. Maybe I'll even pay you $150 more. I'll pay you more than that. I'll pay you $1,050. Don't ever do that, because what happens when they don't pay you? You have no recourse. You can't go to Section 8 and say, hey, they're not paying me the extra. And they're like, what are you talking about? The contract, because the lease is signed for $900. That's it. That's all Section 8 is going to pay you. And if they bail on paying you the extra money, then you can't do anything about that. You literally essentially have to wait. Plus, I think it's against the law. To do that.
That's kind of what I always heard.
So it's just, but a lot of people fall into that trap because they're like, oh, that's not a big deal. They can afford $150 or $100 extra. It's just, you should never do that. So this is what it is. What comes along with Section 8 besides the guaranteed payment? Well, annual inspections from Section 8 office. They're going to come walk through your property and they're going to probably ding you for a few things. Just, they'll go and inspect the property before the person moves in, but then on an annual basis, if you keep allowing this resident to live there, they'll come back every single year and they'll walk through that property, and more than likely they're going to hit you for things that you were like, well, why didn't you catch that on the first go round? And if you have a different inspector, it just kind of depends on that person as to what they're going to hit you for. It's insane. But so that's it. So that's what Section 8 is. So I'd like to hear from you. What do you think the biggest challenge with Section 8 is?
Well, just from hearing what you guys have talked about, like you said, I think putting in the correct tenant, because, and you tell me if I'm wrong, you could do all the screening on the tenant, all of your due diligence. Sometimes that doesn't really matter, right? I mean, maybe they don't have much rental history, but I'm sure you've had horror stories before of everything checks out great, and then you put somebody in and they're a terrible tenant. They don't, they tear up a house, they do this, they do that. And, I don't know. I've heard horror stories, both sides. I've heard Section 8, tenants, they really want to be on their best behavior because they don't want to lose this voucher. But I've also heard of, hey, we did all this stuff, we've done our background checks, Section 8's paying for it, but they're just terrible. Maybe they said they had 2 kids that were living there and now they've got 6 people living in this house, So have y'all had?
Yeah. I think I've had what I think, I've I've had really good experiences with Section 8. I've had normal experiences with Section 8, and I've had really bad experiences. And I think that's it. Like everybody has typically people have a strong opinion based on their own personal experience. I've been doing it long enough and have had enough that I've had kind of the spectrum of, hey, it's fantastic, and I never want to do this again.
Yeah.
Like I think probably when I've gotten in the most trouble with Section 8 is when I had bought a property that has a Section 8 resident in there.
Already in there.
Yeah. Because I wasn't doing any of I wasn't doing the screening the person. I didn't really walk through that house because I bought plenty of houses I never walked, but just because they're they have a resident in there and I didn't want to bother them, just wanted to buy the house. So I had one that like literally, I think they got renewed on their Section 8 lease. I bought the house, and then they knew that they were going to be leaving the program or leaving that property, and so they just let it go to pot, and it was just total trashed.
Yeah,
like completely trashed. And then they moved out. I've had another one where, this is interesting. I had one where the person moved in, and we started collecting Section 8. They came and did the inspection. They moved in, and then literally they never lived there again.
Really?
For 12 months. They were not there.
But you were still getting paid?
We were still getting paid.
Wow.
They were not living in the house. I don't know what in the world was going on. We went to check on it like 6 months in, and there was nobody there.
Wow.
Nobody had lived in. No furniture was in the house.
That's weird.
Yeah, very, very strange. And then I had one that I've talked about on this, maybe if I talked about it on the podcast, I know I've talked about it on our other YouTube channel, just the one with Deborah McNath, and she was a great resident. She had a full voucher. She was paying like $5 or $10 a month. And then at the end of the time that I had with her, she actually passed away. She was paying 95% of the rent, and Section 8 was paying just a tiny little portion. And to me, that was the best because that's the way the program's supposed to work.
Yeah.
And I think that's what the federal government is now realizing is like, hey, you can't just, it's not really smart. It's not good use of taxpayer money to allow Section 8 to go on forever.
Yeah.
Right? Section 8 is not meant for you to get on it and then be there for 10 years.
Yeah. And see, I never realized that until you told me. I never realized that it was supposed to be a short-term program. I just thought once you're on Section 8, like you're just low income or you're on disability, whatever it is, like I just thought it was because you couldn't afford anything else. I never realized it was meant to kind of help you get off and wean yourself off of government assistance. You know?
I mean, listen, of all the Section 8 residents that I had, and I had some great ones and got along with everybody, there was not anything that any one person had that they wouldn't be able to get a job. Besides they were taking care of kids.
Yeah.
Right? Besides they had kids. Other than that, like I know a lot of single moms that have jobs, and so it really is more of a, hey, let's get this person back in society, and then that's how you allow other people to get on Section 8.
Yeah.
That's how the system should work, because you have people coming off Section 8 and then new people coming on because they're in a bad spot, and so they need a kind of a helping hand to get back on their feet.
I mean, I would think the percentage coming off, I don't know about people getting kicked off. I don't know what that percentage is, but I would assume the people coming off of it on their own is probably slim to none.
Like, why would you want to, right?
Yeah.
If the government's paying for your housing, I mean, shoot, why would you ever want to come off? There's not a good incentive to, honestly. That's the problem with the government.
Yeah.
And from that standpoint, I think.
Well, so let's take, and this is kind of off topic, but I've heard people say before, like on disability, they would say, like we start talking or whatever, walking through somebody's houses, and they're like, I could go get a job, but they're like, I'm making more on disability and I get to sit at home. And if I go get a job, I'm going to be making less. They're like, why would I do that? So, I mean, I think sometimes it could be crippling to people because what's the motivation to get a job? If you got 2 or 3 kids, 4 kids, and you're getting, $2,500 a month or whatever it is from disability, I know that's for another day, another topic, but
it's the same thing because it's a lot more work to do that. It's a lot more work to have a job and raise kids.
Well, yeah. If somebody could choose to make the income they're making now and not go to work, they would probably not go to work,
Yeah. And that's the challenge with Section 8. So investors, they actually like the way the system is right now, because who doesn't want to rent their house to a Section 8 resident for 10 years, guaranteed rent for 10 years, as long as they're taking care of the property. Of course they want that.
Yeah.
Now the challenge comes, so here are some of the downsides. It does take longer to get the property approved than a private pay, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have more vacancy usually on the front end of if you want to rent your property Section 8. And so you're going to have, obviously you're going to have just kind of a waiting period because the paperwork has to be approved, and then they have to go out and inspect the property, and then they have to sign the documents and all of that stuff. So it does take a little bit longer. However, what I found is once you get a Section 8 resident in the property, if it's a good property, they'll stay for a long time.
Yeah.
They're not really necessarily interested in moving out. And usually, to your point earlier, because they don't want to get kicked off the system, they tend to, not totally abuse the property.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
But there is a downside from a maintenance standpoint in that they live in the house a whole bunch more, right? They're flipping more light switches. They're flushing more toilets. They're walking on the floors more, on the carpets more. They're eating in the house more. I mean, the kids are in the house. So it's just,
they're there all day.
They're there all day,
Yeah.
right? They're not out at a job for 8 hours a day. And so they're in the house, which is going to mean more wear and tear. So if you're buying an older house in whatever city you're in, if you're buying older house stock, and then you got somebody living in it and wearing it out, guess what? You're going to have more issues. And so that's why, one of the reasons why every time an inspector goes to that property, they're finding things to fix. And so you're going to have higher maintenance expenses. That's another issue with it.
Well, let me ask you a question. So on our outline here, you've got, the next section is guaranteed rent, guaranteed cash flow, right?
Yeah.
So right now it is October 28th, 2025. We're in a government shutdown now for about the last 30 days. Does that affect, is there ever a time where the government is not going to pay that Section 8? I mean, like, I know right now some of the government workers are furloughed, but like, I don't know the order of the hierarchy of these government programs, but have you ever seen Section 8 not be paid out in a month?
I have not, but I do think that's a real threat.
Yeah.
Right. If the government shutdown lasted for a long, long time, then I'm guessing you would have more programs would be having to cut back because they just don't have the budget. They don't have any money. And so I think I've not ever seen that happen. There was a time, and I can't remember if it was during the Great Financial Crisis, that there was a delay in checks, or if it was another government shutdown, but there was a delay with some of the assistance payments. And there's nothing anybody could do. You're kind of at the mercy of the government.
Yeah. And I'll say, I mean, I guess, so let's say, because I mean, everybody's still going to get their pay, even these government workers. But if they miss a month and you've got bank loans on it, I mean, and you're living,
still having to pay.
I don't want to say paycheck to paycheck, but that's what it is. If you're not really cash flowing that much right now, and you're still having to pay, and you can't make that payment, that would be kind of the only risk, I guess. Or if it goes vacant and you have a bank loan on it, and you have to miss a couple months, maybe a vacancy.
Yeah, well, not only that, a couple months of vacancy, but then you're going to have to rehab the house. You're going to have to paint, clean carpet, or replace carpet, that type of thing.
Yeah,
and get it ready. Then have it inspected again, and then they're always going to give you a punch list, and you're like, oh, I got to go do this stuff.
Yeah,
and the thing is, if you have a resident in there and they come and walk that property and give you a punch list, you've got about 30 days to get that done. So you've got to fix it and then get them back out there to look at it. That's the only way you keep from getting like your payments interrupted or the house disqualified. So if the house gets disqualified, guess what? You won't get any payments anymore.
So can we talk about that for a minute? Because I've heard about this for years about, it's got to be approved by Section 8. It's got to have this punch list. But I will go into houses and look every month or two. An owner's trying to sell a house with a Section 8 tenant, and I don't know how these things passed. Like, okay, so if I go pull permits, I know the city's got to come in. They're gonna require all this different stuff. I guess Section 8 is just a different animal because, I mean, I see painted over switches, painted over fuse boxes, like all the stuff you see. Like, how do they? I don't know. It seemed for it to be a government program that has to say, hey, has to be up to this certain standard. I've never walked into one that had a long-term tenant that I'm like, wow, they've really. It looks like they shouldn't have been approved. You know what I mean?
Welcome to the government.
Yeah, yeah.
Like these are government employees, you know? And I think it's very subjective based on the person walking the property.
Have you had different like strictness, like
one inspector who's like,
100%. You got to replace every switch in the house, and one person's like paint over it.
Yeah, and I even think probably different Section 8 offices are different, right?
Really?
So even in Birmingham, at one point I think we had 4. I think now we have 2, but there was like Birmingham, Jefferson County, there was Bessemer, and maybe there was Forestdale or something like that. I can't remember, but now I think we only have Birmingham, Jefferson County. Everybody wanted to work with Jefferson County. They were reasonable and they were really, really good and got things done quickly. They were efficient. Birmingham Section 8, total crap show.
I've never heard those words come out of anybody's mouth talking about Jefferson County.
Yeah, well, no, that was our experience back in the day. It may be different now, but Jefferson County's, the Section 8 office compared to Birmingham was like a beautiful thing.
Birmingham City versus Jefferson County.
Correct. Okay. Yeah, Birmingham City, Section 8. So even in your city, if you may be buying properties in St. Louis or in Jackson, Mississippi or Memphis, like probably different Section 8 offices are going to operate a little bit differently, but this is the general gist of it. And it's very subjective.
So y'all do, I've only ever heard about Section 8 in Birmingham, and we're talking about, 80 to, I guess it could be 50 or 60,000 houses up to $120,000 houses maybe. It probably didn't go past that for that kind of level of income.
Yeah, I've not ever seen much of anything like $150,000 and above.
Yeah, it's usually 120 and under. 120 being probably the close to the top.
I think I've heard of Section 8 paying, at least in our city, paying up to $1,200-$1,300 a month.
Yeah, and once you get past that mark, it's not gonna.
I don't see much of it.
In other cities, is it the same price point? Do other states pay more?
Yeah, I just kind of believe it's based on the median rent price for that city. And so in Denver, Colorado, like every property has to be available for Section 8. If like this, at the moment I'm recording this in 2025, in the fall of 2025, I believe that is the case. So this just changed probably 3 or 4 years ago.
State law? What is it?
Yes. Where everybody, you can't turn down, you can't discriminate against Section 8. In other words, you can't say, nope, we don't offer it for Section 8. Every property has to be available. Now, does that mean that a Section 8, like if somebody came to you, if you had a $3,000 a month property in Denver and somebody came and they had a $1,000 a month voucher or $2,000, you don't have to rent that property to them because they don't meet the price. So that's kind of the way around it, but it's still, again, in our city here, you don't have to offer it to Section 8, but in some municipalities you do. So
in Denver, let's say you have a house that's $2,000 a month. They're trying to rent it. Somebody has a voucher just for argument's sake for $2,000. Can they deny them for any other reason? Like could they? Yeah, they can do normal screening process, right? It just can't be based on the fact that they have Section 8, and it can't be based on any other like discriminatory, it can't be sex or religious preference or familial status or anything like that, any of the other protected classes. Okay. Yeah, that's crazy that you have to offer it. So I never would have thought that. But but a lot of times they get priced out, right? Yeah. A $5,000 month property is not going to probably rent Section 8. Yeah, I know I'm putting you on the spot here. Would you have any idea what percentage of rentals in Birmingham are Section 8? I don't have any idea, but rentals, I think that all depends on what class area you're talking about, right? So your rentals, there are rentals in A class areas. So just a reminder for everybody listening, A, B, C, D, F are really like A is the top class and B is I would call upper middle class, and then C is working class, and then D is you get into some sketchy areas, and then F is like the bottom of the bottom. D class areas, I would say you don't really know because you don't know what landlords are accept Section 8, which ones don't. Okay. And so it's hard to know, but I would still say it's still a minority. Yeah. I would still think it was probably 20% of rentals are about 20%. Section 8. Yeah. I would say that. And then, of course, when you get up to B class, Hoover area or whatever. When you're close to $2,000, $1,800, $2,000 a month, you're probably not getting many Section 8. 0%. Yeah, 0%. But going back to, I do think the key issue that people need to understand is the two things I think that absolutely impact your Section 8 experience, because again, everybody's very, very passionate about one way or the other. If you go read the comments on our YouTube videos, it's the resident you put in there. You can put great, fantastic Section 8 residents in there, and you will have a fantastic
experience. Like you'll have a great experience. It'll be like incredible. Like, hey, I get a check every month. They're pleasant to work with. They call me if something needs to happen. I go in there. The house is clean. They're taking care of it. And I love that. I think that's fantastic. Or you could have just a complete nightmare. And I've had some of those. The other thing I think that impacts that is, which I think they align, is just where you're buying that property. If you're buying it in a war zone with high crime and really, really bad schools, graded schools, then you're probably going to have more trouble than anything else.
And probably a lower payment. If you got a $500 a month, $550, it's going to be
what kind of experience is that going to be for you? Not good, but this is the challenge. A lot of gurus out there, and we looked at some of the videos, a lot of the gurus are out there saying, oh, you can cash flow $500 and $800 a month. That's insane. That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And you would have to be buying Class F properties. I don't know. I just don't ever see that happening. It's insane, but there's so much more risk when you're buying these really low income areas.
Yeah.
To have a bad resident and to have a bad Section 8 experience. People tend to think that, oh, the remedy for buying a piece of crap house is to put Section 8 in there and they're always going to pay me and voila, I don't have to worry about it. That's not true. Yeah. There's a lot more factors other than somebody missing their payment. It's tearing up your house, it's vandalism, it's vacancy. If you buy a piece of crap house, guess what? It's going to take a lot longer to rent it. Section 8 residents have choices. They can choose different places, and if yours is a piece of crap in a really, really bad area, I just don't expect it to get rented very fast.
Yeah.
Or expect more vacancy.
Well, if you want to, let's talk about that, what you were just talking about, the gurus online. Like you said, I know we reacted to some videos a week or two ago, but, break it down for everybody as far as, this is what, okay, let me put it this way. This is what I see and why I can't see why Section 8 works. You can tell me if this is right or wrong and tell me if my numbers are right. Let's say that you've got, it seems like $750 a month is pretty, I see that a lot, right? Does that sound, is that about an average in Birmingham, about $750?
I think it depends on where you are. I think that changes. I think you can buy, like you and I were talking before we hit record about a house that you're buying in an area called Roebuck, which is Class C neighborhood. Yeah. Wouldn't you think?
Yeah, probably.
Good working class neighborhood. And it's a more expensive house, $250,000 house. I think you could get Section 8 there probably you could realistically rent for $1,300. You could find Section 8.
That's a 3-bed, 2-bath?
Yeah, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 4-bedroom, 2-bath.
Yeah.
Something like that. I believe that exists. And so $750 is more of like the bottom tier. Okay. I see that as like D class. $750 is pretty low.
So let's call it 1,000 is probably average. Let's just say for
I would say 900 to 1,000.
900 to 1,000. Yeah. So let's do, okay, so let's say $1,000 a month, and this is if we're going by the 1% rule, if people don't know what the 1% rule is, that's whatever the purchase price of the house is, what you're all in for, 1% of that you want to get at least for rent. So if it's a $100,000 house, you want to get at least $1,000 a month in rent, right?
Right.
So if you're somebody that, and we see this a lot with West Coast investors, people who just want to park money somewhere. I think local investors, from what I've seen, are looking to get a little more than 1% return on their money. But I know people do the 1% rule all the time. But what I'm getting at is,
they used to, but it's harder now
to get the 1% rule?
Yeah, it's a lot harder now.
Yeah, you're saying they have to take less to be able to, like on these turnkey.
It's now more, especially with turnkey. Used to, you could find 1% pretty easily, but now it's gotten so difficult. It's more like the, it was 0.5%.
Yeah, 0.5, 0.8%. So let's take a $100,000 house, and let's say what you're talking about. Let's say they had to pay $120 to get that $1,000 a month, $120,000 to get that $1,000 a month in rent. What, 10% property management fee?
10%,
okay.
Yeah.
All right, so that's $100 right there. Minus, what do you suggest with your people? Maybe 15% for CapEx a month. How much do y'all suggest to put back?
Oh yeah, CapEx. Yeah, probably 10 to 15% for CapEx and 10% for regular maintenance.
Okay, so that's another $150, right? So that's $250 right there just for management and for what was the first one I said?
CapEx.
Management and CapEx. Yeah. So you've got, you're at what, $750 right now out of that 1,000. So you're at $750, and then if you didn't pay cash for it, you've got a bank loan on it as well, right?
That's right.
So you've got a bank loan on it, and bank loan that could or could not, they may or may not pay your property taxes and your insurance out of escrow.
Correct.
So, right now interest rates with a bank, you probably get around 6.5%, 7%, but you're putting money down. So all that to say, let's take off another, I don't know, call it $300 or $400 a month. Do you think you get $300 or $400 a month for a $120,000 house right now? More like $500 a month.
More
probably?
like $500 a month.
Yeah. So $500. So we're already at $200 a month. Really, $200 a month is our cash flow right now.
And then you've got vacancy.
Yep.
You got to do vacant. Then you got insurance. Right. So there's other things. In there as well.
So I mean, just by those numbers there, I mean, we were already at just 200 to 250 on cash flow. We didn't include our taxes. We didn't include our insurance, our vacancies. I mean, if you buy wrong, you're not looking at very much cash flow at all.
That's
but
correct.
All that to say, these gurus online, and you've looked at them probably more than I have. They just say this so easy. You go on Zillow, you find a house for $80,000, you rent it for $2,200 or some garbage like that guy was saying the other day, which is a total lie. And then the government sends you money every month. You're cash flowing $1,000 a month, whatever it is. I just don't. I've never seen that happen around here. Maybe other places like a Denver or something, but I just don't see it.
Denver would be worse.
You can tell me more than I can tell you since you're in the business more. But how do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's completely ridiculous. I mean, if you are breaking even, I think that's, again, the whole idea of buying real estate, in my opinion, is it's not really about cash flow. Because let's just say you're getting $150 to $200 cash. Are you gonna what are you gonna do? Quit your job? No.
Yeah.
It's like $200 a month. That's nothing. And so the whole idea is, if I keep this long enough, guess what happens? I get tax benefits. I get appreciation. I'm going to get rental appreciation. So my rent, hopefully if I bought a good house, the rent is going to continue to go up. And then my mortgage is getting paid down every single month. So let's just say I'm not making any cash flow. These things are still going to happen, right? I'm going to get tax benefits. I'm going to get appreciation. I'm going to be paying down the mortgage and then rental appreciation as well. And so in 10 years' time, it looks completely different.
Yeah.
So it's very much a long-term strategy. And if you don't have a long-term mindset, which is the problem with the gurus, because the whole idea of a guru, the whole idea of somebody in real estate talking about how much money they make, is they're trying to convince you that you can make a lot of money in as little amount of time as possible with very little effort.
Yeah.
That's how people sell. People sell, hey, you don't have to do anything. You'll make the maximum amount of money with very little effort and with very little issues.
Yeah.
That's just a lie in life.
Yeah.
like working out is the same way, right?
Yeah.
Like just going to the gym once doesn't do anything.
That's right.
It's literally a consistent, like, what are you doing over months and months and months and years and years and years to become a healthy person?
Yeah.
Same thing with real estate. It takes years.
And I think the problem, like you mentioned with the gurus, is they act like this can be your active income, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, maybe if you have 100 of them making 150 a month, sure, it could be your active income. But, they get on there, even though they're making their money from these courses and from other stuff, like that's their active income. Maybe they're actually only cash flowing 150 a month, but they have this other active income. So I think you're right. It's a good place to put money, and it's a great program if you buy right, if you're not reliant on that income in case something goes south. And, like you said, after 10 years, I think you forget about it, let the property management company do their thing. And then in 10 years, you've seen, okay, values are going up, rent's going up, and my mortgage is going down. And then you're at a point where you're starting to hit that amortization. You can actually, cut away at some debt. And I think that's where you start to see the tipping point.
Or if you're in a higher interest rate and you're like, hey, I can refinance now. I can refinance in 5 years and go a lower rate, which will increase my cash flow if you wanted to even do that. But yes, so most people that we see who are doing this successfully they have good paying W-2 jobs. They're not out there trying to, how fast can I quit my job? I think those types of people get in trouble. What they start doing is buying portfolios, and they have no business buying a portfolio of properties because they don't know what they're doing. And all they do is accelerate their pain. Accelerate their like how quickly they're in pain and figuring out this was not the right thing to do.
Yeah. So a couple other questions I have, and then that'll be all the questions I have for you. But do you think it's better to buy something from a turnkey company. Obviously, I think I would never want to manage a property myself. We have some people that I know, Brian being one of them, tells us, he'll say, hey, if you got one or two, just manage them yourself. I don't want to deal with that headache. But let's say that somebody is wanting to get into Section 8, they're wanting to get into real estate investing. Do you suggest they go to one of these turnkey companies, or do you suggest they find a house that needs work and they do the work themselves or hire somebody themselves to save that money to build that equity? What are kind of your thoughts on that? And does it matter where you are in the country?
I do. I mean, listen, like let's just say you're on the West Coast and you're in tech and you make a lot of money, then and you're like, hey, I'm looking for a place to park some money, park some cash, or I just want to diversify. I've got a ton of equity, I've got stock options, all this stuff, and now I want to buy some real estate. Going to a turnkey solution may not be a bad thing. If you can find a reputable turnkey provider where you talk with a bunch of their clients who are just like you. I would talk to several people who own property from long distance and get an idea, are they really legit? Then buying from them might be okay. But for most people, if you're not super high paid tech person or whatever, I would find somebody who can, we've got a ton of investor friendly agents. They're finding deals like off market deals. These deals still have to have renovations. And so there's still probably some equity that you're going to be able to have in that house. With a turnkey, you're essentially paying retail. If you want to pay less than retail, then you go through a wholesaler or through a investor friendly agent, and you find that, then you get your rehab numbers, and you can probably have some equity in that. It just kind of depends on how much work you want to do. To me, there's a lot more legwork on the buying the discounted house that needs a lot of work. There's a lot to look out for there. Less trouble with turnkey. I think the biggest challenge there is just trusting the turnkey provider. Yeah. That they're not just putting lipstick on a pig. And because I've seen that a thousand times. We've seen that 1,000 times. Like I went and walked a house probably 4 or 5 months ago, 6 months ago, and I walked in and it was billed as this great property, and I walked in one of the rooms and the ceilings were like 7.5 feet tall or 7 foot. And I was like, this is horrible. Yeah. No resident is going to want to rent this. I don't even know if it passed Section 8 inspection. The ceiling was so low. Really? And then I found out that it was owned by a turnkey company here in town. And I was like, oh, no wonder. Because they're very much known for putting lipstick on a pig. And I was like, yeah, I can tell this is one of their houses. Yeah. So you just have to be careful both ways.
Well, I'll say I get probably a call once a month from marketing I send out from investors, and these are the hardest houses that I see. I've never bought one like this because it just doesn't make sense. Somebody bought a house out of state. They bought a house that needed some work. They're planning on doing it for Section 8. They start fixing it up. They're trying to manage everything out of state, getting local contractors, all that kind of stuff. Or they could even be in-state local, but they don't know what they're doing. And I get a call in the house. They said, worst phone call I get is, hey, I've got a house that I paid X number of dollars for a few months ago, and it's completely gutted. And I mean, those are the hardest ones because, not only have they started the work or gutted it, you don't have a livable house right now. I would rather buy a livable house that is a piece of garbage that you can do what repairs you need to do versus there's nothing but studs and wiring in the house. And now you're on the city's radar. You've got to get it inspected. Maybe they pulled permits. Maybe they didn't. It's just a nightmare. But I get probably one call a month on that. And over in Fairfield's the last one I got, guy wanted $120,000 for this house that was gutted. He was like, yeah, I paid $100 for it a couple months ago from some, it was kind of like a turnkey provider, but I don't guess it obviously wasn't turnkey at the time. And he said, we're $20,000 in repairs. I'm just trying to recoup my money.
And you're like, hey, you're not going to recoup your money.
I was like, man, I hate to tell you this. I was like, it's never going to sell for that over there. Some people, I tell them that, they're like, okay, you're just not a real buyer. That's fine. I'll call somebody else. Great. I hope you sell it today for $120,000. And then I'll even give you people's numbers and let them, you think I'm offering you 40 because it's too low. They're going to offer you like 20, So,
and that's, Adam, what you just said is the whole reason I try to be as real as possible on anytime we sit down and talk, we want to be dead honest.
Transparent.
We want to be transparent, and because those are horrible calls. I've had hundreds of those calls where I've talked, and they're like, "Hey, I'm trying to sell." I'm like, "You're never going to get your money out, never." And I hate that for people because, and so I just got a comment on a YouTube video we did recently, and they were like, I can't remember if it was one of our shorts that we did or what, but they said, "Man, you make me, you sound like I should never buy any real estate, or you make me scared enough to," and I'm like, I don't want to scare people. I just want people to be very careful.
Yeah.
I want people to, you know, you don't have to go through pain that other people have gone through. Like, learn from other people's mistakes and be smart and take it slow is my whole thing.
Yeah.
And make good decisions. Like, I wonder what you would have told that person if they came to you and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about buying this house in Fairfield. This is how much I'm going to pay for it. I'm going to pay $100. I'm going to put 20." What would you have told them? 100% you would have said, "Time out. You don't need to do that."
Terrible idea. Yeah.
I would have said the same thing. And that's what I see so many people, they don't do. And what we're trying to tell people, I want you to buy rental houses. Obviously, we manage like 20,000 of them. We love for people to buy rental houses, and we love to manage them. But we want to manage good houses.
Yeah.
We want to manage houses that you've made a really wise decision, because when you buy a bad house and you give it to us to manage, guess what? There's going to be problems. You're going to get frustrated at us, and the resident's going to get frustrated at us, and we're just kind of in the middle person going, "Hey, we didn't buy the house. We're just telling you the truth."
Yeah.
And it puts us in a really tough spot. But we want to see people buy houses and make really smart decisions. And unfortunately, the gurus and certain people out there, bad actors, try to sell junk and take people down.
Well, too, if you have, anybody asks for your advice, I know that y'all would tell them kind of like I would, exactly, the truth, because, okay, you get one person that's a new investor, they get one house with you. If it's a terrible buy, chances are they're probably not getting any more. If you walk them through and you get them a good house and they get a good house and they're making a little bit of cash flow and building equity, chances are they're going to do another one with you. And they, maybe they start with one, then they get 5 and 10. Who knows how far they'll go? But the problem I have with the gurus, one of the other problems I have several, but is, okay, they say, well, let's go down and get a DSCR loan. If people don't know what a DSCR loan is, that is a loan based off what the property income will bring in.
Yeah, the performance of the property.
The performance of the property. I've talked to probably 20 banks. Not too many people do DSCR loans. And especially, they say, "Oh, yeah, just go to any bank, get a DSCR loan, and then you just put a little bit down, and then, you're good to go. You just go pick a house off Zillow, buy it. You're going to be instant cash flow." It just doesn't work like that. And I think people think when we tell them here in state, we give them good advice. Some people say, "Oh, you just don't know what you're talking about. I'm taking this guy's course. He's a professional at it." Okay, is he local? Is he here? Does he do it? If he does it here, maybe, okay.
How many properties does he own here in our town?
Yeah. So anyway, I just think there's a lot of bad advice out there, but I think we're on the same page about transparency.
Yeah, that's right. Well, all right. Well, it's been good to chat about Section 8 and everything, other things related to Section 8. So that's it for this episode. If you enjoyed this, leave us a comment or subscribe to the channel, and we'll be back next week with another episode of the Evernest Real Estate Investor Podcast.